Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Talk Show. Today, we're going to be looking at the question, is Pope Leo the 14th boring?
That's right. We're going to take a look at the new Pope, who has largely not made a ton of headlines. And we're going to tell you exactly why, if the Pope is boring, that's exactly what the church needs right now.
All right. Good to be back with you, Ryan. This is an interesting topic because, like you said, you can come at it from a couple different angles. It'll be good to jump into some of these with you.
That's right, Ryan. It's never boring hanging out with you. So I'm glad to have you back and after your little summer break here. But Pope Leo has not hit the scene like maybe the last couple popes before him. Some would even say Pope Leo so far has been kind of boring. And over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, when we were talking about popes and talking about what a future pope may look like, I had consistently said, this is the kind of pope that we need next, is a boring pope, a pope who is largely seen and not heard, not making headlines, who's keeping a stability and a quietness to the church. So we're going to take a look at whether or not Pope Leo is boring per se, or if he's just providing a much needed pacing change and stability to the church. Now, before we get into it, I want to make sure you click the like and subscribe button. It's the easiest way that you could help us reach this show, reach more people. Just click the little button. That way you'll be notified of every piece of content we have to create. And then also go to CatholicTalkShow.com. You can see all the different platforms. You can subscribe to us there on all the social medias and all your favorite podcast players and video services. So, when we were talking about doing this episode, I said, Ryan, here's the concept for the episode, that Pope Leo's boring. And you're like, well, what has he done that's boring? And I asked the question, well, Ryan, what has he done that's exciting? And you said,
kissing babies,
right? You didn't really have an answer. And I don't think anybody could really have an answer to that. When you look at maybe the pontificate of Pope Francis, he came out, even from the second of his election, he came out without the, red mosetta, and he looked different than popes before. And people are like, oh, this is a new kind of pope. It's the first pope from the Americas and South America, and a Jesuit pope, breaking kind of, I don't know, the mold of the last few popes. And then
he took the bus with everybody. It was in not in the Pope mobile. Just very different. A lot of people were talking about that.
And decided not to stay in the papal apartment. Was in the headlines constantly. We're not seeing that same kind of coverage with Pope Leo. And I think that's one of the best things. I really think Pope Francis's pontificate, to a large extent, was erroneously perceived by liberals and negatively perceived by conservatives because the media covered him so slanted. I don't think the media ever, and maybe that's because Pope Francis wasn't maybe as clear as a communicator as, say, John Paul II was, or wasn't as theologically precise as Benedict the 16th was. But the media had a field day with him. They're like, oh, who am I to judge? Oh, the Pope, is saying, let's have gay priests, and, all these comments, on the planes and stuff like that. Pope Francis was very kind open to those things. And a lot of times those caused, I would say unforced headlines, right? I don't want to call them errors, but unforced headlines. You're not seeing that with Pope Leo. Pope Leo, he's not giving interviews. There's no rumors starting about him. He's showing up, he's saying the mass, he's going to all the spots, making quiet moves, stability. And I think it is, so throughout history, popes largely have not come in and made radical changes and have an agenda for their first 100 days in office, like you would expect from a politician. And that's why tradition has been able to be upheld for so long within the Catholic Church. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't want a pope to come in and change stuff every time there's a new pope, because that would create such a untenable scenario where from pope to pope, the church is going to look radically different. And what I had been saying for a few years is we need a pope to come in and just be the pope. Don't try to be a superstar. Don't try to be in the headlines. Don't try to be a celebrity. Don't try to do all these things. Go there, be the pope. Protect the tradition, protect the gospel, preserve it, and pass it on. That's what the pope's job is. Pope's job is not to radically transform every teaching in the church in his own image. He's supposed to come along and protect and transmit the sacred deposit of the faith. And I think that's what we're going to end up getting in Pope Leo the 14th. And it couldn't come at a better time after, I mean, really, the church hasn't been able to come up for a breath of air since Vatican II. You know, I mean, the rapid change, I mean, you had John the 23rd calls the council, and you got communism going on, and the world's under the threat of nuclear war. And then Paul VI comes along, and the mass changes to the vernacular and goes away from Latin. And you got the whole debate around artificial contraception and abortion. Then you have John Paul II, who's maybe one of the most charismatic men who's ever lived, let alone Pope, and he's fighting communism and all these changes. Even though John Paul II, I think, kind of helped stabilize the changes coming out of Vatican II. Then Benedict XVI, you know, the media didn't like him. The media was always attacking him and spinning everything he said in a very negative way because he was viewed as conservative. Then Francis came along, and Francis was Francis. Now, I kind of skipped over John Paul I, but, you know, he was only Pope for 30 days. So, I mean, the church has just been in a constant whirlwind for almost, 70 years now.
Yeah.
Let's take a break. Let's just go to mass. Let's just wake up and do your job. Ryan, you know how much I love to say, just do your job, right? That's my thing.
He looks like that kind of Pope. He's just got that sweet smile, that Pope look. Yeah. You know, I would say this phenomenon, and we've talked about it, is the news cycle and internet and all these things. The other phenomenon is, Francis, we have more critical perspectives, more critical analyses. We have a way more captive audience in the United States and the Western world. More particular, the Catholics in the United States are definitely more, they form more opinions, I think, than a lot of people in other areas of the world. So I do think there is a phenomenon here, aside from Francis's papacy, where our media, our church is going to take things and run with them in a particular way. And I don't know if the Pope is getting PR advice more than he's merely just sitting up and talking and not really understanding that this is Francis, not really understanding the consequences of some of these things and how they might be portrayed to some area of the world, especially the United States. So there's always that. I do think Pope Leo's he's made really good Orthodox, the positive faith comments about society, about capitalism and the effects of greed on humanity and all these. He's also, made statements about war now that so he's not like hiding.
No.
He also made a statement that he wants to reestablish union with the Eastern Orthodox Church, which I think, and we've talked about this too, I think is about time,
vital,
it's just
necessary.
why are we doing this? We both have valid sacraments. I don't know. It's been a long time. Can we just kind of bury the hatchet here and become one,
Right.
So he is doing, and sometimes doing the right thing is not something that is going to be extracted into the media world and dissected. So I do think a lot of that nuance of his papacy is there. Yeah,
Ryan, that's my point exactly. And I think you hit it on the head, is that he's doing all the things a pope should do. He's talking about peace, talking about sacraments, talking about family life, talking about sin, talking about justification, talking about unity within the church. That's what a pope should do.
Yeah.
You had mentioned you didn't know if maybe Francis had a PR advisor. I know for a fact at the beginning of his pontificate, he had a bunch of PR advisors. And and I think they did a good job. I remember Greg Burke. He was from Fox News.
Yeah.
He was the PR advisor. He was a real sharp guy.
He's a very sharp guy.
And he did a great job. He ultimately ended up leaving that post, but you could see the kind of media blitz that was pretty savvy when Francis was elected. You could see the photo ops. You could see the narrative being built around him of what kind of pope he was, and kind of instructing the media on how to cover him. With Francis, it was a barrage. With Leo, it's calm. And the media is not, but not from what I've seen, they're not spinning it, they're not sensationalizing it, because he's not giving them anything to bite on. He's not giving ambiguous statements. He's not giving room for misinterpretation. He's being careful, he's being stable, and he's doing the things a pope should do. And I think everyone should do your job, be quiet, and work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And I think that's what Leo's doing, right?
Yeah.
You look at John Paul II. John Paul II's, skiing down hills and, standing up to the Soviet Empire and, surviving assassination attempts and starting World Youth Day. I mean, John Paul II was a worldwide phenomenon, superstar, rock star, one of the biggest personalities. Whether if he had not been Pope, he would have been a movie star. Like, he had that kind of charisma. Benedict XVI, he got I think a pretty unfair shake. The media attacked him for everything he said. He's saying this. He's so conservative. The church is going backwards. He's against women. He's against Muslims. He's against homosexuals. All this. But here's the thing, right? I think, as a father, you and I understand how a father can be most effective. And the Pope is the father, the spiritual father of all Christians on the earth. That's his job as the vicar of Christ. And a father doesn't need to be wild. He needs temperamental. He doesn't need to raise his voice. So, sometimes. But what he should be is a sign of stability. I think that's one of the most important things a father can be, is stable. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're getting with Pope Leo, is a stable, sober, competent, thoughtful, and ultimately spiritually beneficial pontificate. And I hope that trend continues, because a boring pontificate is, I think, what the church needs now more than ever.
Yeah, I also think media coverage as well has broader cycles, broader strokes. Unfortunately, a lot of it revolves around politics.
Right.
So I do think there's some influence in the political realm that if you give them something, they will take it and prop up whatever party and ideals that they're trying to prop up. And just giving people ammo for that, I think he was nothing short of, an armory, of just like,
right.
I mean, and again,
he was an ammo dump for the media, for sure.
Yeah. And I get it. I don't think he intended that to happen. Maybe he did, but I would not make a judgment upon that, because you just don't know. There's a lot of humanity involved. There's a lot of intentions that aren't clear, but I do think, he came at a time where I think a lot of the things he said were lumped in, because he did say a lot of really good things.
Sure. Francis said a lot of great things.
Yeah.
But I think we can also look at the political climate, maybe even 5 years ago, 2019, 2020, COVID, and Black Lives Matter, and the legalization of gay marriage. It was a pretty crazy time. It's only 5 years past, but I think when we look in the future, we'll look at the end of the 2010s and the early 2020s as like, dude, that was a crazy time. That was as tumultuous as maybe the late 60s, with riots and immigration and wars. And it was a wild time, and the media was unchecked. You could see that in its political coverage. You can see that in its social coverage, and you could definitely see it in its coverage of Francis. And I think we've seen, society, pontificates, politics, economies, sports, everything. It always moves in a pendulum, right? Things will move one way very far to the left, and then it always recovers very far to the right, and just keeps swinging back and forth, with the mean being the center, right? And that's how society, that's how everything in life is. And I think if you look at popes throughout history, whenever there's been a wild pontificate or a revolutionary pontificate, I think the cardinals have always been inspired by the Holy Spirit to have a, like the saying, after a fat pope, a skinny pope. The pendulum kind of swings back the other way. And a lot of times you'll see, even in Francis's own words, a pope who made a mess, you'll see a pope who comes in and is quiet and stable, and who's very good managerially and very good at making the church stable. And you see that in everything. I mean, you see that in politics, you see that in sports. All of a sudden everyone's running the wildcat. Well, they find defenses to change that, and then the offense adapts to change whatever the defense is doing. Or everyone's starting to shoot the 3-pointers, so now you're doing the 3-and-D defenders, and then all of a sudden you're going to start seeing big men again. Everything swings back and forth. And I think what we're seeing now is probably not a swing far to the right, but I think we're seeing that kind of we're probably in the middle. We're probably stabilizing somewhere back in the middle, where the Pope just shows up, does the Pope thing, goes home, says his prayers, and everyone's the better for it. And that's great.
Yeah. I'm sure he's got a lot of stuff to do as well, but I think he's carrying a lot of dignity with him.
Good word.
The dignity, that whenever I look at him, I just see a very dignified man, somebody who's very well balanced and also, up for the task and happy and joyful, and with the very few things he's, publicly been, reported on doing, it's, there's nothing there for people to take out of context, which might have been, is being purposely done. You never know.
Maybe. Yeah, I think I was listening to something with Bishop Bear, and he had talked about his impression of having met, seen, and heard about Cardinal Prevost at the Synod for Synodality. And he had asked people, what do you think of this Cardinal, Prevost, and what's he like? And what he had heard is that at every, you know how it's at conferences, you have the big conferences, then you go to the group table, and then you have the little sessions, right? And everyone said that at every table he was at, Cardinal Prevost, now Pope Leo the 14th, was the quietest one there. He was quiet, he's listening. And, we could just be in a period where he's getting used to the job. I think he even made a joke. He said, hey, I'm new to the job and I'm still learning how to do this thing, right? A couple of days ago. But maybe he's listening and he's getting the lay of the land and he's assessing where it's at, because he does not seem to strike me as somebody who makes rash decisions, who's making sweeping changes without real thoughtfulness. And Ryan, we've heard this, whether it's a new priest coming into a parish or a bishop coming into a diocese or archdiocese, the advice they always get and they always give is, don't make any big changes for 1 year. Yeah. Like Ryan, I mean, when Jen sadly passed away, I think that was one of the first things I told you was, take a year. Yeah. Don't make any big lifestyle changes. Take a year and see how everything settles. And perhaps that's what we'll see with Leo. And it would strike me as kind of true to his character as a quiet Midwestern Augustinian. Let's see what everything is. We don't have to go out and, I don't know, throw huge parties or do something crazy. We don't have to go and change doctrine. We don't have to go out and call a council or start a holy war or bring in female priests. We don't have to do anything. In fact, we could just go to mass every week, show up on Wednesdays, bless some babies, and see what problems we really have to solve. And as a Midwestern myself, I think that is a very Midwestern approach of, hey, one day at a time. Let's see what we got in front of us before we take these big rocks and turn them into little rocks,
Yeah. And there's a lot of wisdom to that. I think he was also conditioned a lot by his missionary service work that he did in South America. You're going into a different culture, even as he was moving around in Peru and South America, like you're still going into vastly different cultures. So I think, his ability to listen and to be a part of that culture, but to also be a Catholic priest and then a cardinal.
Yep.
I think that speaks volume to, the statement that he is listening and letting things arise like in God's time, and then taking those to heart with his authority. I mean, I don't think he's passive at all. I think what he's
I
doing,
wouldn't say that either.
right. I think what he's doing and listening is a very active thing that, eventually will, phase something into the way he sees things, and he'll be able to act within it. But yeah, it's just the wisdom of the church. Don't change anything. I mean, I knew a priest that went to a church and he moved the chair, the presider's chair, like maybe a 10% angle, and he thought he was going to get slaughtered outside the church, man. And it's like he's like, I didn't know that would cause this kind of uproar. And I'm like, wow. I was thinking change like big things, but the presider's chair really just set a bunch of people off. So
I remember you telling me that story, and the presider's chair. I mean, maybe he just bumped into it. The angle changed, and all the ladies
guy
went into a Dionysian rampage and wanted to tear him apart and throw him in the river. And it's just like,
yeah.
So I think there's probably a lot of wisdom in not making any big changes, right? But I think sometimes people can mislabel. And we said boring, but it could be that he's discerning. It could be that he's steady and solid. It could be that he's dependable. All of those things a lot of times get confused with being boring. I mean, if you think of all the most dependable people in your life, they're usually not the ones who are out drinking till 4 a.m. and jumping out of helicopters and skiing down volcanoes. They're usually the ones who go to bed at 9 o'clock, wake up, go do their exercise, drink their Metamucil, and show up, right? And that's good. That's actually really good. And I think one of the things that's most wrong with today's world is that it is incredibly loud. It is incredibly fast moving. It is incredibly distracting. It is incredibly oversaturated with messages and with needs and with the vision that everything has to change now, and change is always a moment away, and you could be whatever you want to be, and anything can change. And it's dizzying how perplexing and fast-paced the modern world is. And perhaps, and maybe consciously, but maybe subconsciously, Leo the 14th is looking at this and saying, look, everyone calm down. Everyone be cool. Let's breathe. Because I think the antidote that this world needs right now, especially, I mean, with AI and stuff like that, everything keeps continuing to move at a faster pace. There has to be an alternative to what this world has to offer. And sometimes, growing up, there was 7 of us in a 952 square foot house, right? It's chaos, absolute chaos.
I know nothing.
There was no calm. There's 5 kids, 2 dogs, my dad, total wild man, right? And you know what the best place to go was? Walk 2 streets over and go to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and it was quiet, and they'd have a Bob Hope movie on, and they'd be making soup, and it was calm, right? And that was kind of everyone, all of us kids, that was our refuge. Like, I'm piecing out to Grandma's. It's calm there, right? There's a little more space. I'm not around all of you guys. And I still to this day, like, that's my Happy Gilmore happy place. Go there and be calm and quiet. And the church needs that too. The church needs that contemplative. I mean, even Christ himself said when he's talking to Mary and Martha that the contemplative path is the better path. And who contemplates anything in today's world? I mean, everything's a 15-second reel, and then you sweat past it and you're on a completely different thing. You could be watching sports, then you're getting a recipe, then you're getting a history lesson, and it's all, and within 45 seconds, it's schizophrenic, right?
Yeah.
And to have a pope who's leading us to kind of a constancy, a quietness, a certitude, even if it's not traditionalism, a traditional way of the papacy moving through the world. I don't know. Look, if Pope Leo's boring, I think that's a good thing. And I think that's what I've been hoping for.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially somebody like you, quiet.
Just call me boring, dude.
Want to read? Yeah.
Well, you know, Ryan, I think you look at you and I, and we're in business together, and we both bring our particular gifts, right?
Yeah.
And you know, you come in big ideas and shoot for the moon, and you know, then I'll look at the feasibility of things, and we'll make them work together.
Yeah.
And I think it takes all kinds like that. And I think John Paul II was like that. I think Francis was like that. I think Benedict was very quiet. He was kind of the, I don't want to say anti John Paul II, but temperamentally, he was very counter to JP2. And then Francis, and then the pendulum swings back to Leo. You know, he had a media rock star to a librarian to a media sensation to
mathematician.
A mathematician. and that's how it should work. That's what you need, you know?
Yeah, you can definitely tell he's a very ordered man. And you know, the Holy Spirit's always working in the church, even when we're not, we're not all there. The Holy Spirit's always working in the church. And I think he's definitely a sign of where we're going to be in the next, 10, 20, even 20 years, hopefully. And I, that being said, I'm still looking forward to, I still like to see what he's saying. He still is my Pope, and he's just not saying a lot. That's all. And that's fine.
He's saying a lot, but I mean, he hasn't issued any encyclicals yet. There hasn't been any major trips outside of the country. I don't think he's even signaled aside from maybe, AI, he hasn't really even signaled what are going to be some of the main themes of his pontificate. But like you said something there pretty important. He's only, I believe he's 69. He could very well be Pope for the next 20 years. Ryan, think back to 20 years ago where we were technologically and societally in 2005.
Oh my gosh.
Now look where we are now in 2025. I mean, the world back then doesn't exist anymore. Now imagine where we are going to be in the year 2045, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the future is a strange land. And God willing, Leo will still be Pope then. And to have someone who's constant, stable, to be able to go through what could be a wildly upheavaling time in history, having a calm hand at the mast, I think shows the wisdom of the cardinals inspired by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what's not boring, though? I'll tell you what's not boring. Do you know what's actually really exciting?
We're going on a pilgrimage?
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah. Let's talk about it. Ryan, I wasn't even ready to talk about that. And you just throwing out them headline attention, grabbing things. All right. So Ryan spilled the beans. So why don't you tell them then, Ryan?
Well, I don't know all the details. I've been out with my family. What I know is that sometime in October, we're going to go to Ireland. That's what I know.
Ryan, you couldn't be more wrong, dude.
Oh, shoot. Really?
Right? Yeah. Look, this is actually perfect. This perfectly exemplifies what we've been talking about, right? That is everything you just said there was wrong. So,
okay, never mind.
That's okay. We are going on a pilgrimage. We're going to be going to Greece. We're going to be doing a cruise in the Aegean to Greece and Turkey. And we're going to be seeing some pretty amazing sights. So we're going to be seeing Athens. We're going to be seeing where Paul preached to the Athenians. We're going to go to Corinth, where he wrote the letters to the Corinthians in the early church there. We're going to go to the Isle of Patmos, where St. John received the revelation for the apocalypse. We're going to be going to Ephesus to see where Our Lady and St. John lived after the resurrection and the ascension. We're going to be going to Crete. We're going to go to Santorini, and we're going to be doing this on a cruise ship. Now, this is going to be extremely limited. There's only going to be 50 spots available because we are renting a cruise ship through our partners at Select International, who, if you've went on a pilgrimage with us before, you know how great of a pilgrimage they put together. We are going to be announcing this and releasing the link within the next week. This will sell out immediately. Every pilgrimage we've ever went on has sold out, and we usually up to 100, 130, 150. We have room for 50. We will be putting that link out here within the next week. So you're going to want to jump on this really quick. It's a really affordable trip, and it's going to be great going on that blue Mediterranean and the Aegean Sea, going to all these places. What's going to be cool is we're going to allow a lot of pilgrimages. You have to pack up, get on the bus, go to the next city, this and that. This one, it's 2 stops. We're going to Athens, and then you're going to be on the boat, getting the sea air, having all the amenities of being on a cruise, not having to pack and unpack every night, but then travel together just like St. Paul did around the Mediterranean on the boat. It's going to be awesome. And the fact that we're going to see where Our Lady lived with St. John, where St. John received the book of Revelation, we're going to see really important spots of the very earliest church of St. Paul's ministry. It's absolutely amazing. And I think this, like you said, is going to be a great opportunity for us to also learn more about the Eastern Church and pray for that unity that has been so important to Pope Leo already as Pope. Now, amen. We'll release that link here very soon. If you have questions or want to see if you can get in early, you can go to Select International and you can call them up and say you're interested in going on this trip with the Catholic Talk Show to Greece. I don't know if they can take your reservation yet, but if you call them, you might be able to get in there. Like I said, this is going to be limited to 50 people. We only have 25 cabins. So that'll be, 50 couples, right? If you want to go on this, you better get on it because this will sell out. This is going to be here in October or November. They'll have the final dates there. And by next week, you'll know the exact dates and we'll have a link where everyone can sign up. But if you want to try to get on the pre-sale, go there. The second thing is I want to give a shout out to Hallow. Definitely not boring. In fact, I was just watching their Twitter and they've reached over a billion people having prayed on it. It's just absolutely, a billion prayers said on that app. They've got so much going on. Hallow is doing such cool things. And if you want to try out the world's #1 Catholic prayer app, and I would say the #1 prayer app in the world, you can go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow and you can try it out for free, get all the premium features, and see if it's something that doesn't radically change your prayer life, Ryan. I know you use this app all the time with yourself, with your kids. I know Jen used it throughout her sickness. What has Hallow meant to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a part of our family's prayer life. My kids use it. My older kids use it. I use it with the little kids when we go to bed, just like the Bible stories for kids. Personally, I use it for the rosary, Lectio Divina, which is my favorite type of prayer. And then, these I don't know, when Advent comes up, they'll have an Advent challenge and all that. Now they've got parishes that sign up. I know our men's group, uses it. But yeah, no, it's I don't know, but for the last, 7 years or however many years it's just been a very instrumental. And it just keeps growing, right? Not just the people that are using it, but the content that's in it for music. Catholic lo-fi, all these different chants, study guide type things where people are giving you commentary on scripture. They've got videos now that they're doing in the app. It's just been a blessing in my life, Yeah. And I know it's been a blessing in a lot of other lives because I see people that watch the show and they've all got Hallow. It's like we got some crew, rolling with it. It's great. Yeah.
Well, we've been partnering with Hallow for 5-6 years, and there's a reason for that because they really are doing something magnificent. I mean, they're using the best of modern technology to bring prayer into people's lives. They're bringing prayer into people's palm of their hands everywhere they go. And if that's not evangelization, I don't know what is. So again, if you want to try out the app and get all the premium features and see if it's something that can really change your prayer life, go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow. Finally, Ryan, let's cue the sad music and let's get the tears in our eyes. Please help us. We're poor and we can barely keep the show going. Ryan, do you have any sad thing you could say?
Yeah, man. Like these aren't even real books behind me.
They're not. For just $5 a month, you can help Ryan Delacrosse get actual books behind him and help us get back into a studio by going to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon. I mean, in all seriousness, it is through the support of our patrons that we are able to continue to do this show, from the editing to the all the different platforms we have to maintain, to the different people that we have to rely on to help us produce the show and get it out to more people, just to even things like lights and microphones, right? All of this has been provided through the generosity of our patrons and our listeners. We have a lot of great and easy to support tiers. I mean, just a couple dollars, and it goes a long way when all of you together team up and help us continue to make this show reach so many people. I mean, we're reaching millions of people a year through the Catholic Talk Show. We've got big plans for the fall. We're really, we're trying to get established back into a studio now that I think life is kind of getting back to a normal pace. Ryan, with the big changes you went through in your life and the changes that we've went through in the Catholic Talk Show. And through your generosity, we're going to be able to get there and continue to make this show and reach millions of people. So look, there's $5 tiers, $10 tiers. There's tiers for any kind of budget. And we are not asking for your mortgage, your car payment. I mean, it's basically the cost of a cup of coffee a month. I mean, if you met us in public, you'd probably buy us a cup of coffee and we'd be happy to reciprocate it. And that's kind of the same concept here. Just a little bit goes a long way, but when it's all together, makes a big difference. And we have a lot of great gifts that we can offer in our gratitude, from hoodies and hats and coffee mugs and prayer sacramentals and cool things that we give that allows you to show that we are so grateful for your prayers and your financial support. So again, go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon to support us. So,
and a big shout out to everybody who's stuck with us in this like tumultuous time where, personally, all of us were going through, or were, in certain things in our lives that required our attention. As that now begins to, fade into some form of history, we're starting to see how this is all going to come back together. And it's been difficult, but at the same time, I've been very appreciative of everybody sticking with us and being a part of our show and supporting us and encouraging us to keep going. So many thanks to our listeners for that.
Yeah, we've all had sicknesses in the family and really challenging personal situations. And I think just like Pope Leo's providing, we're all hoping for a nice, boring, stable time. I mean, there's nothing I think that we could use more. I don't think there's anything the church could use more. And, I hope this isn't my epitaph and I hope this isn't on my grave, but being boring is good. Being boring is, I think, underrated and maligned for no good reason. I think it was Chesterton. He said the most extraordinary thing in the world is an ordinary man and his ordinary wife and ordinary family.
Yeah.
And ordinary and boring in today's world where everyone's trying to get attention and trying to, do the most ostentatious things on TikTok to get views, or say the most crazy things, or have the most salacious headlines, or be the most different or the most unique. Look, man, sometimes just wake up, ring the bell, call, and do your job, man. Availability is the best ability, right? Whatever. Look, just do what Bill Belichick or Pope Leo would do. Just that's it. Or maybe not Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's wild anymore. Dude kind of went off the rails. I want to retract that. Just do what Pope Leo XIV is doing and calling us, is to have measured, calm, stable relationship with the world, with the people around you, with your own thoughts, with your own emotions, with your own prayer life, and see if that kind of structure can't really bring some great things into your life, because I think that's what Pope Leo is providing. And I'm excited to see where, God willing, like I said, the next 20 years can go, where he can shepherd God's people through changing times. And I really do believe that the Holy Spirit inspired the right pick here, because I think he's exactly what we need in the church after a crazy 50, 60 years, is a calm, steadying force, a very solid man at the wheel of the bark of St. Peter.
Yeah. I like it, man. Be ordinary. Little flower.
Be ordinary. That's
Little flower.
Well, we're in ordinary time. right?
Yeah.
Embrace it.
Simple. Be a simple man.
That's it. Be a simple man. Be a simple kind of man. Be something you'll love and understand, right? I think that was that
Leonard
Aquinas
Skinner?
or was no, that was Ronnie Van Zant. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Leonard Skinner.
Who's a Jacksonville native, man. He's from your backyard.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, it's always good to talk to you. I'm glad to see you back. I know you had a great time up in the mountains with your kids, and
much
looks like a lot of fun. Yeah, much needed. And now that you're back, I think we'll get back into a little bit of an ordinary schedule here, and
love it.
Can continue to put out content for y'all. So
yeah. Thanks for joining us this week, everybody. We'll see you next week.